welcome the Minister into the House. And first of all, I'd like to say that I'm pleased that this issue and this bill is getting adequate time in this House to be debated. I've listened with interest to the speeches already made on the issue, and I'd just like to make a number of points. First of all, I'd like to address the speech given to us yesterday by An Taoiseach and respectfully received by, although not warmly, by the members of the House, needless to say, yesterday. When the Taoiseach spoke about the need for government to reform and the fact that nothing was done in 75 years in relation to the Seanad, almost as if it was the fault of the current Seanad that nothing had been done. He also referred to the fact that there was initially vocational panels set up to ensure that we had expertise, and he intimated that that hadn't worked out quite so. I think it's only fair, and I think it was referred to yesterday in responses from the leaders of the various groups, that indeed we have expertise in this House, from Senator Sean Barrett to Senator Fergal Quinn to many others with expertise across a wide range and field in this country. The Taoiseach also made reference to the fact that, and he named other EU countries who worked a unicameral system, such as Denmark, Finland, Norway, Croatia, Slovakia, referring to the fact that none of these have a second house. But what he failed to deal with yesterday was the system of governance that they had below Parliament in these countries. For example, in Finland, they have 304 local authorities and 10,000 local councillors. Norway has 423 local authorities and 12,000 councillors. When we compare this to what has been proposed in this country under local government reform, where the number of councillors will decrease, it is proposed from 1,467 to 949. The rural parts of Ireland being hardest hit. For example, in Monaghan, the number of councillors will fall from 56 to 18, a decrease of 68%. In Tipperary, it will fall from 100 to 40, a decrease of exactly 60%. And in the Taoiseach's own county of Mayo, it will fall from 52 to 30, a decrease of 42%. When we compare this to the numbers that represent democracy at local level across Europe, in Denmark we have a councillor for every 2,245 people. In Norway we have a councillor for every 423 people. One might say, what is the relevance of this in relation to the debate we're having today? Well, I would put it that the relevance is that not alone do we intend to strip out the second house of democracy, we also intend to strip out major tiers of local government. Indeed, the system of local government that we have in this country is as centralised, and indeed almost more centralised, than the British system, where it was devolved from. When you look across Europe and you look at regional governance, where finance is raised locally, where provisions of services are made locally, you compare that to this country, where there are no services at local level we're talking about, where we don't intend, as of yet, to put any new decentralised services into the local government reform bill. It is very difficult to accept the comparisons that the Taoiseach made yesterday when he spoke of Scandinavian countries and stood up the fact that they didn't have a second parliament and questioned the reason as to why we should have one. Well, the reasons are very clear, because they have regional government. They have a real working regional government. We have none. The other issue which the Taoiseach chose not to discuss or not to put forward in his speech to this House yesterday was the issue of cost savings. Initially, the initial statements from government in relation to the abolition of the Seanad stated that the Seanad would save, in some cases, in some statements, up to 20 million per annum. The actual figure for the salaries of senators is 4.2 million per annum. It is now being discovered by the pro-abolitionists that the issue of cost savings should be dropped from their agenda, because indeed my own party colleague, Minister Howlin, has said on more than one occasion that no money will be saved, that the money will be redeployed into Dáil committees. Deputy Liam Toomey requested that any money be saved, be redeployed into Dáil committees. So the argument in relation to cost savings has now been nullified by the government itself. So one would have to ask, why are we proceeding with this? Are we proceeding because a commitment was made at a press conference in October of 2009? Or are we proceeding, as some other senators have proffered here already today, that this House is not working properly and that it's not actually doing the job that it was set out to do? Well, no more than many other new senators in this House, I can only judge for what I've seen in the last 2.5 years. And within the limited scope of what we're allowed to do constitutionally, I believe it's doing a very good job. But if we want to reform what the Senate is doing, why did we choose to take the road that we have now decided to take, which is the road of abolition or retention? I was asked recently on local radio whether I believed there was an option B. Of course, there was no option B to Croke Park 2. But then when it was rejected, we discovered that there was the Haddington Road agreement. There's always an option B. An option B in this case should mean reform. Reform of this House, an examination of the whip system that's currently in place, the opportunity for senators to vote as they see fit on certain criteria in relation to legislation. And when people say that we're removed from the public and we're removed from democracy and that we don't represent people, there are 43 members in this House who are elected directly by county councillors, across county and city councillors. On average, each councillor who is elected gets 1,500 votes to be elected. On average, the number of votes received by successful senators in this House is 75. So if one does the maths, we represent, albeit once removed, on average 100,000 per head of population per senator in this House. To say that we don't represent anybody and that we don't represent the public is untrue. I also come to the issue of the role of senators outside of legislation and their role in representing councillors who are their electorate. And I, like most other senators in this room, will receive on a daily basis representations from councillors of all parties and of none on issues that are of relevance to them at both local and national level. And we use our position as members of this House to raise those issues on the order of business, or indeed when legislation is going through the House, to bring forward the views that have been expressed to us by councillors. That is a representative role which is undervalued and unknown by many people in this country. We do not, at least most of us do not, think up issues for the good of our health to raise on the order of business. For example, yesterday, to give one example, I raised the issue of unscrupulous moneylenders in this country, of the fact that they are going outside of the law, even the ones that are licensed. I didn't decide to raise that yesterday morning. I was contacted by councillors, a number of councillors across this country, who have faced this issue in their communities. And I, as a member of this House, took the opportunity to request this matter to be addressed by the central bank, who are the licensing agencies for moneylenders. So we do carry out a very important role in this House. We shouldn't run hastily to abolish this House. The Minister, who was a member of this House, who was also a member of a local authority, for a number of years, thank you, knows full well what I'm talking about. And there is a question, and it was challenged already, that this House hasn't either delayed or referred back legislation since we started 2.5 years ago. Well, I am still wondering what is the right thing to do on this legislation. Maybe the people of Ireland, and maybe the debate does need an extra 90 days. And maybe I will, after today and the rest of this debate, reflect on that before I press any bell.